The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden glow over the bustling marketplace of Zora Prime. Alien species of all shapes and sizes moved about, exchanging goods and stories, walked among the alien crowds, some on business, others simply exploring this strange new world. But among all the people, one figure stood out in the middle of it, all a young alien girl sitting alone at a small table in the corner of the market square. Jake, a human who had just arrived on Zora Prime, wandered through the marketplace, his eyes wide with curiosity. He had been told that this place was a melting pot of different species, a place where humans could meet all kinds of strange and fascinating creatures. But there was something about the girl sitting at the table that caught his attention. The appearance was striking, a long, slender figure draped in a deep blue robe that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. Her skin, a shade of pale lavender, seemed to almost hum with an ethereal quality. Her face was delicate, framed by long, dark hair that cascaded down her back. Despite the beauty that radiated from her, something was wrong. No one dared to approach. Her people passed by, casting quick glances her way, but never stopping. Jake noticed that they turned away, holding their breath, or even covering their noses. He couldn't help but wonder why. There were no obvious signs of danger. She didn't look threatening in any way. But as Jake walked closer, a strange, pungent scent hit him, a mix of spices, burning herbs, and something else he couldn't quite place. It was strong, too strong, like the smell of something rotten. He watched as a merchant walked past, his eyes widening in disgust before he quickly turned around and walked the other way. Jake stopped, confused. He had never seen such a reaction to an alien before. Why was everyone avoiding her? Was it something about her appearance? Her scent? Girl didn't seem to notice. She sat there, her eyes distant, staring at something no one else could see. Her posture was perfect, yet her expression seemed sad, as though she was waiting for someone. She looked lonely. A flicker of empathy stirred in Jake's chest. He had been on Zora Prime for a few days now, and he had heard a lot of rumors about the different species living here. Some were friendly, some not so much, but none had ever been treated like this. No one had ever been this isolated. He felt a sudden urge to approach her, to find out who she was and why she was sitting all alone. He took a deep breath and walked toward her. The moment he sat down at her table, the girl's head snapped up, her violet eyes locking onto his. There was a moment of silence between them, and Jake couldn't help but feel an odd sense of familiarity in her gaze. He wasn't sure why, but it was as if he'd known her for a long time. "Are you going to leave too?" she asked her, voice soft but steady. Jake blinked in surprise. He had expected her to say something, but not that. Her words were direct, and they carried an odd weight to them. He couldn't tell if she was speaking to him or to herself. "No," Jake replied, feeling oddly comfortable with her, despite the strange circumstances. "I was curious about you. I've seen everyone avoid you. I don't understand why." The alien girl's expression softened, but there was a tinge of sadness in her eyes. "It's my scent. It drives people away." Jake frowned. "But it's not that bad," he said, trying to be polite. Truth was, the smell was overwhelming, yes, but it wasn't unbearable. It was strange, yes, but not horrible. Her lips twitched in a small, sad smile. "Most people think it's unbearable. The data want to be near me." Jake leaned forward, his curiosity growing. "Why? What's wrong with it?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked down at her hands as if gathering her thoughts. "It's a natural part of who I am, my species. We carry a scent that repels others. It's not something I can change." Jake was taken aback. He had never heard of anything like that before. He had met people with strange quirks or habits, but nothing like this. A scent so strong that it made others run away? "That's awful," Jake murmured, his voice filled with sympathy. "But I don't mind it. It's different, yeah, but I can stand it." Her eyes flicked up to meet his again, and there was something almost surprised in her gaze. "You're the first one not to immediately leave," she said softly. "Most humans, especially, are sensitive to smells. But you stayed." Jake smiled. Yeah, I'm a bit different. Guess I've just never met someone who smells this unique before. The alien girl raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Unique? Jake chuckled, trying to ease the tension. Yeah, unique. It's strange, but it's kind of comforting in a way. It reminds me of something from my past. Her expression shifted slightly, her lips parting as if she wanted to ask something but wasn't sure how to word it. From your past? Jake nodded, a little lost in thought. When I was a kid, my grandmother used to cook with all kinds of spices. I spent a lot of time with her, and the smell of her cooking always made me feel safe, like everything would be okay. It's the same kind of feeling I get from your scent. For the first time since he had met her, the girl smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face and made her look even more beautiful. Jake didn't realize it then, but that smile would be the beginning of something neither of them expected. The marketplace of Zora Prime continued to buzz with activity, but for Jake, it had all faded into the background. His attention was focused entirely on the alien girl sitting across from him. Her scent still lingered in the air, a strange mixture of herbs, spices, and something elusive, something that felt almost like a forgotten memory. The crowd around them moved on, but no one seemed to dare approach the table. Despite the warmth of the market, there was an invisible barrier, a space around the girl that no one wanted to cross. People gave her a wide berth, as if the scent itself was a warning they had learned to heed. Jake noticed how they would wrinkle, their noses as they passed, their eyes darting toward her for a second before hurrying on. Do you mind? The girl asked, breaking the silence. Her voice, soft yet steady, had a quiet strength that Jake found compelling. She wasn't asking about the smell, though. She was asking about something more. Why did you sit here? With me? Jake blinked, slightly taken aback by the question. Because I wanted to talk, he said simply, leaning forward. Seem different. Everyone else is too scared to sit near you. But I think there's more to you than just your scent. Her eyes flicked up at him, almost surprised by his response. You really don't mind? She asked quietly. You're not disgusted? Jake shook his head, his expression sincere. No, it's not as bad as people think. I mean, it's strange, but I can stand it, and I think it's a part of who you are. The girl remained silent for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if processing his words. She seemed to be studying him, trying to determine whether he was lying or just trying to be polite. I'm used to it, she finally said, her voice tinged with a sadness Jake couldn't quite place. It's just part of me, and most people don't understand that. It's my curse. Jake frowned, confused. Curse, he repeated, his voice filled with concern. How can something that's part of you be a curse? The alien girl's lips twitched, a faint smile crossing her face. You wouldn't understand. In my species, we don't belong here. The others, they think of us as animals, filthy creatures. She paused, her eyes darkening, because of the way we smell. Jake didn't know what to say. The idea of someone being rejected simply because of their natural scent seemed wrong, deeply unfair. He knew that humans, back on Earth, had their own prejudices and biases. But he had never heard of anything quite like this. He sat in silence, watching the girl, who now seemed lost in thought. The weight of her words hung in the air. She continued, her gaze focused on the table before her. My name is Lyra. I'm from the Vizari. Our people used to be proud, thriving, respected. But over time, we were hunted and driven away, all because of something we couldn't control. She paused, her voice breaking slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. Now, no one will go near us. Most of us are scattered across different planets, living in the shadows, forgotten by all. Jake listened intently, feeling an unfamiliar sense of empathy for her. He had heard rumors about the Vizari, but nothing like what Lyra was describing. He could sense there was more to her story, a deep sadness hidden beneath the surface. Lyra, Jake began softly, you're not forgotten. I don't care about your scent. What I care about is who you are. Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for a brief moment, Jake saw something flicker in her gaze, a glimmer of hope, however faint. But before either of them could speak again, a group of alien merchants walked past their table. The moment they saw Lyra, they turned their heads, quickly, their noses wrinkling in disgust. One of them even muttered something under their breath, though it was too quiet for Jake to hear. Lyra's shoulders tensed, and Jake noticed the way she flinched, as if the comment had cut her deeper than any physical blow. She quickly turned, her gaze away, her expression closed off. Jake wanted to say something, to make it right, but the words felt useless. He had no idea what it was like to be so completely rejected by everyone around you. It must have been suffocating for her, the isolation, but instead of retreating into silence, Lyra did something unexpected. She let out a small, almost bitter laugh. "They don't even try to understand us," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "It's easier to pretend we don't exist." Jake felt a wave of frustration surge through him. "That's wrong. People shouldn't just shut you out. You deserve more than that." She looked at him again, this time with an unreadable expression. "Maybe you're right. Maybe people like me do deserve more," she said softly. "I'll never get it. Not here. It's not in a world where my own people abandon me." Jake felt a stirring in his chest. "You're not alone, Lyra. You don't have to keep carrying this burden alone. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Not just because of your scent, but because I want to help." Lyra's eyes softened, though doubt still clouded her gaze. "You're the first human to ever say that? But help won't change what I am. Help won't make people stop hating me." Jake leaned forward, his voice firm. "Maybe not. But it'll make me fight for you. It'll make me stand by you, no matter what anyone else thinks." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. She seemed to be weighing his words, considering them more carefully than she had before. Then, with a quiet sigh, she nodded. "Maybe," she whispered. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's worth trying again." The days passed slowly on Zora Prime, each one blending into the next. Jake couldn't help but return to the market, to the spot where he had first met Lyra. Their conversations, though brief, became the highlight of his day. What had started as simple curiosity had blossomed into something more. Every time he sat beside her, the strange scent in the air no longer felt overwhelming. Instead, it had become something familiar, like an old memory, one he couldn't quite place but knew. He wanted to keep close. Lyra had opened up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone else. Her usual guarded demeanor had softened when they talked, and Jake began to see her not just as an alien with a strange scent, but as someone with a story. Someone who had been through things Jake couldn't even imagine. She shared more about her people, the Vizarian, how they had once been a powerful race, known for their advanced technology and wisdom. But their power had come at a price. Vizari were highly sensitive to their own scent, a byproduct of their biology. But over time, the scent had changed, becoming too strong, unbearable to those around them. Other species had grown to fear them, associating the Vizari's scent with a sort of danger, even though it was nothing more than a natural trait. Lyra's. The voice had faltered as she spoke, the pain of her past slipping through in small moments. "They say we were cursed, that our scent was a punishment for something our ancestors did," she had told Jake one evening. "Maybe we were too powerful, too arrogant. Maybe the universe decided to punish us by making us ... repulsive." Jake had sat there, silent for a moment, not knowing what to say. How could he even begin to understand something like that? But in the silence he had reached out, a simple gesture that surprised both of them. He placed his hand over hers. Lyra had looked up at him, her violet eyes wide with shock. But there was something else there, too, a flicker of hope. However small, she hadn't pulled away. Instead, she had stayed still, almost as if she was. Afraid to move? Afraid that this fleeting moment of warmth might disappear if she did? "I don't think you're cursed, Lyra," Jake had said quietly, his voice full of sincerity. "I think maybe you're just misunderstood. I'm here to listen, to understand. You're not alone in this." Lyra's lips parted, her breath catching in her throat. She looked down at their hands, still resting on the table. Then, with a quiet sigh, she pulled her hand away. But this time Jake didn't feel rejected. He understood that she needed time. That, for her, this was a big step. "I've never told anyone all this before," she had admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "No one cares to hear it. And maybe I was afraid that if I told you, you'd leave too." Jake had shaken his head, his expression firm. "I'm not going anywhere, Lyra. I told you that." The next few days were filled with the kind of silence that felt like an unspoken promise between them. Jake would sit with her in the market. Square, no words needed. He would watch the people pass by, all of them avoiding Lyra like the plague, and yet he stayed. He noticed how she would look at him sometimes, a soft expression crossing her face. But when their eyes met, she would look away quickly, as though afraid of what her own feelings might mean. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the market, something changed. Leah arrived at their usual spot, but Leah wasn't there. At first, he thought maybe she had simply gotten up to walk around or had gone to another part of the market. But as the minutes passed and she didn't show up, a small knot of worry began to form in his stomach. He stood up, scanning the crowd, looking for the familiar flash of her violet skin. After a moment, he spotted her at the far end of the square. Standing by a large stone monument, her shoulders hunched, without thinking. Jake made his way through the crowd, pushing past merchants and travelers. He reached her just as she was about to turn away. Lyra called softly, and she froze. She didn't turn around immediately. It wasn't until Jake took another step closer that she slowly turned her head. Her eyes were red, and her face looked flushed, as though she'd been holding back tears. But she quickly wiped her face with the back of her hand. Composing herself. "I didn't mean to worry you," she said, her voice low. Jake stepped closer, his expression serious. "What's going on? You've been distant the past few days. Did I do something wrong?" Lyra shook her head, her eyes flickering with a mix of emotions. "No, it's not you, Jake. It's just... I'm afraid. Afraid of letting anyone in. Afraid of what happens if I let my guard down." Jake felt a wave of understanding wash over him. "You don't have to be afraid with me, Lyra. I'm not going anywhere, remember?" Lyra's gaze softened, and for a moment it felt like she might say something, but the words never came. Instead, she simply stepped forward, and to Jake's surprise, she placed her hand on his chest. It was a subtle touch, but it carried a weight to it. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Jake looked down at her, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never felt such a strong connection to anyone, not like this. He had always been a bit of a loner, someone who kept his distance from others. But with Lyra, it was different. She wasn't just an alien girl with a strange scent. She was a person, someone who had been hurt, who had endured more than anyone should. And somehow he knew that their connection was just beginning. Whatever happened next, Jake was ready to face it. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he had found someone worth fighting for. The days on Zora Prime had become a blur of routines for Jake. Every morning, he would return to the marketplace, seeking the familiar face of Lyra, his heart light with the hope of seeing her. She had become more than just a mysterious alien girl. She had become a friend, someone he could talk to, someone who understood him in ways no one else could. But there was something about her, something she hadn't yet shared, that lingered in the back of Jake's mind. Lyra had always been careful with her words. Every time Jake tried to ask her about her past, about her people, she would change the subject. She would smile, laugh, and tell him little stories about Zora Prime or the strange customs of the galaxy's various species. But whenever he dug deeper, she seemed to retreat behind an invisible wall. Jake had noticed it more recently. The way her eyes would dart away when he asked about her life before the marketplace. The way her hands would tremble slightly whenever she spoke of her people. He couldn't help but wonder, what was she hiding? One evening, as the sun set behind the distant mountains of Zora Prime, Jake and Lyra sat at their usual spot in the square. The market had quieted down, and the once bustling stalls were now slowly closing. Lyra sat across from Jake, her face shadowed by the setting sun, her eyes lost in thought. Her usual guarded expression was back. "Lyra," Jake began, his voice soft but firm. "I know there's more you haven't told me. I want to understand. Please, just tell me the truth about your people, about your past." Lyra's eyes flicked up to meet his, and for a moment, Jake thought she might refuse. But then something changed in her expression. It was like a dam had cracked, and a rush of emotions flooded through her eye sphere. Regret and a deep, aching sorrow. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I never wanted to tell you this, Jake," she said quietly, her voice shaky. "But I can't keep lying, not to you." Jake's heart skipped a beat. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "You don't have to hide anything from me. I'm not going anywhere." Lyra's lips trembled, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she finally spoke the words Jake had been waiting for. "We're not just any alien race, Jake. My people, the Vizari, we are the last of our kind. We were once rulers of the stars, a mighty empire, built on our strength and wisdom, but we were cursed. I don't even know how it happened, but one day something changed." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of her confession. Jake stayed silent, giving her the space to continue. "We lost everything," Lyra continued, her voice cracking. "Our power, our pride, our very existence. The curse came from within, was tied to our biology, our scent. The more it grew, the more it drove people away. Our scent became something unnatural, something that could drive minds to madness. It wasn't just a smell anymore. It was a weapon." Jake's brow furrowed as he tried to understand. "A weapon?" Lyra nodded, her hands clasped tightly together. "Yes. It was subtle at first, a slight change in the way we smelled. But over time, it became dangerous. Our enemies used it against us. They weaponized our scent, turning it into a means of control. And as our enemies attacked, we began to break apart. Our empire fell, and now, I'm one of the last survivors." Her eyes filled with a deep sadness, and Jake felt a pang of sympathy in his chest. "So your people were all destroyed because of this curse?" Lyra's lips trembled again, and she nodded slowly. "Yes, the few of us who survived were scattered across the galaxy, trying to rebuild. But no matter where we go, we're always hunted. Our scent marks us. No matter how much we try to hide, the past always catches up with us." Jake reached out, his hand gently resting on hers. "You don't deserve this, Lyra. You didn't ask for any of this." Lyra looked at him, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I know, but it doesn't matter. My people are lost, and I'm the last of them. No one will ever accept me, not fully, not while this curse is a part of me." Jake's mind raced. This was bigger than he could have ever imagined. Lyra wasn't just an alien girl with a strange scent. She was the last of an entire civilization, a people destroyed by their own biology, their power turned into a curse. And now she was alone. "I don't care what happened to your people, Lyra," Jake said, his voice strong. "You are not your past. You are not a curse. You're not alone anymore. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Lyra looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to gauge the truth in his words. "Eh?" For a long moment, she didn't say anything, but the way she looked at him, it was as if she had finally let go of the last shred of hope she had been clinging to. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know what it's like, Jake, to be hunted, to be feared for something you can't control." Jake's heart ached for her, and he squeezed her hand tighter. "Then let me help you. Let me fight for you. Not alone, not—" "While I'm here?" Lyra stared at him, her expression unreadable. But then, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, she let out a quiet sigh and nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Jake smiled, his heart racing. He had no idea what lay ahead, but in that moment he knew one thing for certain. He would stand by Lyra, no matter the cost. And little did he know, that decision would change everything. The marketplace of Zora Prime had never felt so suffocating. Jake couldn't stop thinking about Lyra's revelation, about the curse that had shattered her people and scattered them to the far corners of the galaxy. It was hard to process. To think that someone as kind and strong as Lyra could be carrying such a heavy burden. She had opened up to him in a way she hadn't with anyone else, and Jake knew he couldn't turn his back on her now. But something didn't sit right. The pieces of the puzzle weren't adding up. Lyra had told him the truth about her people's downfall. But there was a nagging feeling inside Jake that there was more to the story. He couldn't shake the sense that she was holding something back, something important. It wasn't like Lyra to leave things unfinished or unsaid, and yet there had been a certain hesitation in her eyes when she spoke of the past. He needed to know more. That night, Jake found himself back at the market square, just as the stars began to appear in the sky, casting a cold, silvery light over the city. He had hoped to meet Lyra again, to talk, but when he arrived at their usual spot, she wasn't there. Searched the square, his eyes scanning every corner, every familiar face, but there was no sign of her. A cold chill ran down his spine. He knew something was wrong. As the minutes stretched on, Jake's worry grew. He had never seen Lyra like this before, isolated and distant. He had hoped that, by showing her support, by being there for her, she would begin to trust him more. But now she had disappeared without a trace. Just as Jake was about to leave and search elsewhere, he spotted a figure standing by the edge of the square, partially hidden in the shadows. It was Lyra, but something was different. She was facing away from him, her shoulders tense. Her posture wasn't relaxed, the way it usually was when they talked. This time she looked like she was waiting for something or someone. Jake's heart skipped a beat, stepped forward cautiously, careful not to make a sound. As he approached, he noticed that Lyra's breathing was shallow, almost frantic. She didn't seem to notice him coming closer. She was focused on something in the distance, her eyes locked onto the dark alley across the square. "Lyra?" Called softly, his voice barely above a whisper. At the sound of his voice, Lyra spun around, her eyes wide with surprise, and for a moment she looked almost panicked. "Jake!" she exclaimed, quickly stepping toward him. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe." Jake frowned, his concern growing. "What's going on, Lyra? What are you doing here all alone?" Before he could finish his sentence, there was a sudden noise, like a low hum coming from the alley. Jake's eyes darted to the dark space between two buildings, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Something was moving in there, something dangerous. Lyra grabbed his arm, her grip tight, her face pale. "We have to go, Jake. Now. What is it?" Jake demanded, his voice filled with urgency. "What's happening?" Lyra's eyes flicked to the alley, her gaze filled with fear. "They found me. They've been tracking me for weeks. I didn't want you to get caught up in this, but now it's too late." Jake's blood ran cold. "Who's been tracking you? Who are they?" Lyra's eyes were filled with a deep sorrow. "The mercenaries. They're working for someone. Someone who wants to control my people's legacy, the Vizari technology. They think I know where the artifacts are hidden, where the power lies, but I don't. I don't know anything." Jake felt his heart race. "So they're after you, because of your people's technology." Lyra nodded, her face filled with guilt. "I didn't ask for this. I never wanted to be a target, but they think I'm the key to finding the ancient weapons. They think I'm the last living descendant with access to everything, and they'll stop at nothing to get it." Jake could feel the weight of her words pressing on his chest. This was bigger than just her past. Whoever was after Lyra wasn't interested in her alone. They wanted something far more dangerous. The hum from the alley grew louder, and Jake's instincts kicked in. Without thinking, he grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her toward the nearby alleyway, trying to move quickly but quietly. They needed to get away before whatever or whoever was following them found them first. But as they turned the corner, Jake froze. At the end of the alley, standing in the shadows, were two figure-tall, armored mercenaries, their faces hidden. Behind dark helmets, one of them stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. "You're not going anywhere." Vizari the mercenary growled. Lyra's body went stiff. "No, please. I don't know anything about the artifacts. Swear." The mercenary didn't respond, his hand reaching for the blaster at his side. "You're coming with us." Jake's mind raced. He couldn't let them take her, not after everything she had shared with him. But he was just one person. What could he do? But then he remembered something. The training his father had taught him when he was younger: self-defense, strategy, quick thinking. He might not be able to take them on alone, but he could stall them by time for Lyra to escape, before he could make a move. The second mercenary lunged toward him, but Jake was already one step ahead. He grabbed a nearby crate and threw it at the mercenary, knocking him off balance. It wasn't much, but it gave him enough time to pull Lyra into the deeper part of the alley. "Run," Jake shouted. Lyra hesitated for just a second, her eyes wide with disbelief. But then, without another word, she sprinted ahead. Disappearing into the darkness, Jake turned to face the mercenaries, ready to do whatever it took to protect her. The alley was thick with the kind of tension that seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as the distant echo of Lyra's footsteps faded into the dark. He turned back to face the mercenaries, his body coiled, tight, ready for whatever came next. The two figures, their dark armored forms looming in the low light, were slowly closing in on him. He had only seconds before they caught up, but in those few moments, his mind was a storm of thoughts and decisions. The first mercenary, the taller of the two, spoke again, his voice low, but filled with authority. "You're not just a simple human, are you? You got some fight in you. Too bad it won't matter." Jake clenched his fists, trying to steady his breath. He wasn't a soldier, but he'd learned enough in his time on Zora Prime to know that these mercenaries were no ordinary bounty hunters. They were professional ruthless, and they had been tracking Lyra for weeks. That meant they had a plan. And whatever they were after, they weren't going to stop until they had it. "I'm not afraid of you," Jake said, trying to sound confident, though his voice wavered slightly. The mercenary laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "You should be." Before Jake could react, the second mercenary lunged toward him, the sharp gleam of a blade catching the dim light of the alley. Jake dodged just in time, the blade slicing through the air where his shoulder had been moments before. His body surged with adrenaline, and he spun to the side, narrowly avoiding another attack. The mercenary's armor was heavy, but he moved with the speed of someone who had been trained for this exact kind of encounter. "Stay focused," Jake muttered to himself, his hand reaching for a nearby piece of broken pipe. Anything he could use as a weapon. He swung it with all his strength, hitting the mercenary's side. The impact was satisfying, but the force barely caused the man to stagger. The mercenary grinned beneath his helmet, and with one swift motion, he grabbed Jake's wrist and twisted it sharply. Pain shot up Jake's arm, and he gritted his teeth to keep from shouting out. Jake fought through the pain, pulling his arm free with a desperate twist of his body. His heart raced as he backed away, assessing the situation. He needed to get to Lyra. The mercenaries had her scent, and if they got close enough, they would catch her. She was faster than he was, but there was no way she could outrun both of them if they were already on her tail. From the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow darting behind the mercenaries. It was Lyra. She had circled around them and was now running in the opposite direction. But one of the mercenaries saw her, shouted something, and both of them started after her. "No," Jake yelled, his voice laced with panic. With no time to think, he threw himself into the fray, charging toward the mercenaries. He used the pipe to knock the first mercenary off balance. But the second was already moving toward Lyra. She was still too far ahead. Lyra was fast, but Jake could see her struggling to outpace them. She was fast enough to keep distance for her. While the mercenaries were gaining, Jake's mind raced for a plan, but it was too late. The mercenary caught up with Lyra just as she turned a corner. He grabbed her arm, pulling her back toward him. Lyra screamed, but the sound was cut off when the mercenary grabbed her by the throat, holding her steady. "You're coming with us," the mercenary growled. "No," Jake shouted, throwing himself at the mercenary, this time with more fury than thought. He swung the pipe, aiming for the mercenary's head. But the moment the pipe collided with armor, it bounced off, sending shockwaves of pain through Jake's arm. The mercenary barely flinched. "Fool," the mercenary said, slamming the back of his hand into Jake's chest and sending him crashing to the ground. Jake gasped for air as the breath was knocked out of him, but he wasn't ready to give up. "Not now, let her go," Jake yelled, pushing himself back to his feet. His vision blurry, but focused on Lyra's frightened face. The mercenary, clearly amused by Jake's defiance, took a step toward him, ready to finish him off. But before he could make another move, Lyra did something unexpected. She twisted in the mercenary's grip, bringing her knee up with incredible force into his side. The mercenary's grip loosened just enough for her to break free. She was free for a split second, just long enough to grab a piece of jagged metal from the ground and slash at the mercenary's armor. The mercenary howled in pain, stumbling back, his hand clutching his side. But the second mercenary was all ready. "They're drawing a blaster from his side." "Get down," Lyra shouted at Jake, pushing him to the ground just as the first blast rang out. The shot missed, but it didn't matter. And Jake knew that if they didn't get out of here, they were both done for. With no time left to think, Jake grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to go now," he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Together they ran, darting through the dark streets of Zora Prime. Behind them, the mercenaries chased them, but Jake knew they couldn't outrun them forever. They needed to plan a way to escape the mercenaries' pursuit before it was too late. Lyra's breath was heavy, but her grip on Jake's hand was firm. "They're not going to stop," she panted. "They'll follow us wherever we go." "No," Jake said, his mind already working on their next move. "But we have to try." They ran deeper into the city, not knowing where it would lead, but knowing that the only way forward was together. The night air was thick with the scent of rain, and the streets of Zora Prime glistened under the glow of neon signs. Jake and Lyra had been running for what felt like hours, weaving through the alleys and side streets, trying to lose their pursuers. In the maze of the city, every footstep echoed in the silence, but the sound of the mercenaries' boots closing in was like thunder, relentless and unforgiving. Jake's legs burned, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he glanced over his shoulder. Lyra was still with him, but he could see the fear in her eyes. She wasn't built for this kind of chase. Every moment they stayed on the run put her in more danger. "We can't keep running forever." Lyra panted, her voice strained. "They're going to find us. They always do." Jake squeezed, her hand tighter, his mind racing. He could see the mercenaries in the distance now, their dark figures barely visible in the shadows, but growing closer by the second. The alleyways ahead were narrowing, and Jake knew they were being herded into a dead end. There was no way out. "We'll figure something out," Jake said, though he wasn't sure how. His mind was foggy from exhaustion, but one thought was clear. He couldn't let them take Lyra, not after everything they'd shared. Lyra's face hardened, her usual mask of composure falling back into place. She stopped suddenly, pulling Jake to a halt. "It's not just about me anymore, Jake. It's about what they want. They think I'm the key to unlocking the power of the Viseria, the last of my people. They think I know where the weapons are hidden." Jake's chest tightened at the mention of the Viseria's legacy. The power they had once wielded, and the danger it still posed, was a threat not just to Lyra, but to anyone who crossed their path. The mercenaries weren't just hunting her out of hatred, they were after something much darker. "They're not just after me," Lyra continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "They want the power, they want to control it, and if they get their hands on it, they'll destroy everything." Jake looked at her, his heart pounding. "What are you saying? You know where the artifacts are?" Lyra's eyes flickered with a mix of fear and determination. "I don't know where they are," she said quickly, almost as if reassuring herself. "But they think I do. If they think I know, they'll stop at nothing to make me reveal." Jake's mind raced as the mercenaries' footsteps grew louder. They were nearly there. He had no time to think, no time to plan. "We need to stop running," Lyra said, her voice suddenly calm, almost a calm. She looked at Jake with something that resembled acceptance, a finality in her gaze. "We can't outrun them. We can't keep hiding." To make a choice? Jake's stomach twisted. He knew what she meant. She was talking about the choice that had haunted her for so long, the choice of whether to protect herself or face the truth. To hide or to fight? No, Jake said, shaking his head. We'll figure this out. You can still, but Lyra cut him off, stepping away from him, her gaze hardening. No, Jake, it's not that simple. I've been running for too long, and I'm tired of it. It's time to end this. Before Jake could say anything, Lyra reached into the folds of her robe and pulled out a small, metallic device, a hidden communicator. Her fingers hovered over it for a moment, and Jake's heart skipped a beat. He thought he saw something in her eyes, something that made him realize what she was about to do. You're not going to, Jake started, his voice filled with disbelief. I have to, Lyra said, her voice firm. If I don't, they'll keep coming for me. They'll destroy everything, and they'll use the artifacts to enslave entire worlds. I can't let that happen. Jake took a step forward, his hand reaching for her arm. Lyra, don't. There has to be another way. Lyra's face softened for a split second, the vulnerability she had kept hidden so well breaking through. I'm sorry, Jake, she whispered, her eyes full of regret. But this is the only way. Before he could protest, Lyra activated the device. A soft hum filled the air, and a holographic projection appeared in front of them, displaying a map of sorts coordinates, hidden locations, places Jake didn't recognize. This will lead them to me, Lyra said, her voice tinged with sadness. But it'll also lead them to the truth. The artifacts. Everything they've been searching for. Jake stood frozen, his hands still outstretched as he stared at the map.
Oh, Lyra, no.
She turned to face him fully now, her eyes meeting his one last time. This is my burden, Jake. It always has been. But now it's yours too. Before Jake could respond, the hologram flickered, and a voice echoed through the alley, harsh and cold. Lyra, the voice said, and Jake felt a chill race down his spine. We know you're here. Surrender now, and we'll make this quick. Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes locking with Jake's. You have to go, she said, her voice low but resolute. You're not safe anymore. They'll never stop hunting you if you stay. You have to leave. Jake's throat tightened. I'm not leaving you, he said, stepping closer. We face this together. But Lyra stepped back, shaking her head. No, Jake, you have to leave. I'm giving you a chance to survive. With that, she turned and ran into the darkness, disappearing into the night as the mercenaries closed in. Jake's heart broke as he watched her go. He had no choice now but to follow her, to make sure she didn't face this alone. But as he stepped forward, sound of approaching footsteps froze him in place. The mercenaries were closing in fast, and now there was no turning back.